Hey everybody, welcome back to another week on the topic of Undisputed. Yeah. So I got Kendra back here this week as promised. So she was on the road the previous week and now she's back ready to dig into this topic.
Yeah, so we are talking mind games. You know, we've been traveling so much. We are doing this church plant and really doing a lot of work, thank God. But that takes us on the road, and one of the things that we got to talk about this week while we were traveling together was this idea of the power of the mind, the battle of the mind. And when we think about being undisputed, right, that God, we serve God who is undisputed. We are kids of God. So we get some of that, all of that authority, right? We have dominion. And that includes our mind. We were with an amazing psychiatrist or psychologist this week that was talking about personality assessments. And one of the things that he talked about being able to control in our personality is the things that we think. And he gave just some great context for that. And we thought about just how important that is when we think about working and living as people who are undefeated, undisputed, who are people of victory, because we are people of victory, and just talking about the importance of that.
I mean, the most important place for you to train first. We always talk about training in the body. We always talk about how you need to train and get yourself ready with your finances and all of these other things. But the first place that we need to really take control of is the mind. It's one of our most vulnerable areas. It's the place that changes how you perceive yourself. It determines how we perceive ourselves, whether we perceive ourselves good or in a negative way. It determines what we think we can and can't do. And so, you know, the Bible gives us some really good references of what we should do and how we should think and how God sees us when it comes to our mind. And so hopefully this study this week, which is really more of like a motivation, will help you help you as you go throughout the week. Just recognize when the enemy is trying to attack you in the mind, and then understand how you have the power to say no. Right? And change that.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Just it controls, your mind controls what you think you can and can't do. And so we don't want you to not take this serious because we're like, oh, it's more of a motivation. But this week it's just some short thoughts that we wanted to share that have come off the road with us when it comes to playing with the mind. We know in trying to do this church planting thing, one of the things we've had to control is our mind. Because this is a ridiculous and impossible thing that God has assigned us to do, right? And so we know that we don't get to do it in our own strength. We can only do it through the strength of God. But if we're not careful and we don't watch the things that we're constantly thinking about, and we start letting our mind run away with us, the enemy will play mind games and have us thinking, one, that we can do it on our own, and two, quickly pull that rug from under us and remind us how incapable we are. And that's where he's right. So that's the only part where the enemy is right. We can't do this on our own, right? But there's some things like that for you. Probably there are things that you can think about in your life where you're like, God, I cannot get out of this debt. God, I cannot get my children to act right if you have kids. God, I cannot pass this class. God, I cannot build this business from scratch.
Me, God, I can't get this dog to behave.
God, we can't, our puppy, we can't get our dog to behave. She don't listen, right? We're supposed to have dominion over the animals, but we can't get her to listen, right? But the mind game is that, first of all, you think that you're supposed to be able to do it. That's the first falsehood. The Bible says in John 9 that the native language of the enemy is a lie. And so the first thing is knowing that lie, getting your mind around that you aren't supposed to be able to do these things in your own strength, right? So tell yourself, first of all, there's something greater, someone greater that I have to rely on, God. That's the first mind game. Attack it there. Don't think that you have the power in of yourself. We have authority and power, but only through God. Right? So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
You was about to dig into Romans.
Y'all see, we're ready. I was going
Romans,
to.
so please hop into Romans on the people.
No, Romans 8:28 talks about that. It talks about how all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purposes. And so we have to remember that, like, this is already set up for us to win. It's already set up for our good. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes it might feel like, man, everything is working against me. I know I've said that. I've said those words. Like, it feels like everything is working against me. Everything that can go wrong is going wrong. But you have to remember and stand on truth, right? We talked about that with living stones. Part of being living stones is knowing how to stand on truth, right? We have to know how to tell ourselves the truth. And the truth is that even if everything looks like it's falling apart, as long as you know where your foundation is, as long as you know you have that firm foundation, it's already working together for our good. But the enemy will lie to you and have you swirling in these thoughts. Everything is falling apart. Nothing's going to come together. Everything is always working against me. Everybody is always working against me. But it's a lie, and it's a mind game.
Yeah, that is, I think in that passage what got me was when he says plan, right? And I was like, okay, well, I know that's in the Bible. I know that's in the Bible, right?
What part? Tell me.
And so if we look at Jeremiah 29 and 11.
Yes.
Right. And I actually went ahead and I started reading like all of that. So I'm going to read it all for the people.
Go for it.
So I'm going to read through 14. And so it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and the future. Then you will call on me and come to pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." And I was like, God,
you said what?
I was like, God, like, for real, like, you got this. Here we are in Romans, and then you tell us to go back to the Old Testament, and you already wrote, I mean, old and the new. Yeah. Old and the new. He had it for me, and so
break it down. So we're talking about these plans. So we know that all things work together for the good.
All things work
for
together.
those who are called according to His purposes, right?
And then we know that God already has those plans
way before.
Way before. And then even when we don't think He has the plans, He tells us, "Call on me, and then I will give them back to you." Like, I'll tell you.
Right, and that's the
caveat.
That's the catch. So that's what we want. That's the heart of what we want to say. That's the catch, right? Because yes, the plans are good. Yes, it's working according to God's plan for your life. Yes, it's working according to God's perfect will for your life, right? But we have to get in agreement with it. And part of getting in agreement with what God has for us, with getting in agreement with God's will for us, is not just saying the words of our lips. That's important. Now, words do have power and authority, but it's bigger than saying it with your lips. It's living it out with your life, because it says, then you will call on me, right?
And I will find you.
So we have to know who to call, because the enemy will tell us we're supposed to call our friends. The enemy will tell us that we're supposed to call family, and those are good people and people that love us, but that's not where we start. We have to know who to call, and we have to know that we call on the name of the Lord first. That's the foundation. That's how we fight these mind games.
And you tie it back to when we first started all of this, right? And it talks about, who do we find our identity in?
Yes.
Right? And so when you're looking at who do you find your identity in, it is, the beautiful thing about the word is that I feel like it is a continuum where we can constantly look, and we'll find links to how, future, past, present. We'll find all of these links in the word, right? And so we're supposed to take our direction from Jesus Christ, who's the cornerstone of our life. And then we see in Romans, Paul tells us to, hey, you know what? Like, God already has these plans for you. And then we go back and we look at Jeremiah. And Jeremiah in the Old Testament is telling you that before you knew you, God knew you. And if you forget who you are, you need to call on the Lord so that He can remind you of exactly who He says you are.
Yes.
The mind game.
And so I want to leave you with this last verse. You want to leave it with them?
No, I was about to drop the mic on you just
now. The mic. We want to leave you with this,
so go ahead.
with this last verse. And it's one that I love, a different translation. We often hear Romans 12:2, and we often hear it from the NIV or the NKJV, right? We hear, do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I want to read it from a different translation. I want to read the New Living Translation, because I believe it's beautiful, and it uses just some plain language. Do not copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Do not copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way that you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Y'all, the way that the world thinks, the way that the world does is say, if you think it, it's fine. that it's real to you. Everything that we think is not real. And so we have to know how to discern what is true, what is right. That's why the Bible tells us what to think on those things. Whatsoever good things are good, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are noble, right? Yeah. We're supposed to think in a certain way and control those thoughts, right? Do not copy the behavior and customs. The behavior and customs of the world are to panic, or to freak out, or to lose your stuff over what is in your mind.
To talk down about yourself.
To talk down, to say things to yourself that you wouldn't even say to your friend, that you would never allow your friend to say about themselves, right? But it says that we are to let God transform the way that we think, and then we'll know God's will for our life. So many of us are looking for purpose. We're like, God, what is your will in this thing? What is it that you want from me in this thing? But the access to understanding God's will for your life, the access to understanding what God's purposes are for you, is in letting God transform the way that you think, because that's the real game that we're trying to win. We are defeating the enemy. The game is not against God. The game is not against yourself. Yeah. We are winning the game against the enemy, and it's already set up for your good. So if you're looking for God, what is the will? What is your will for me? What are you trying to get out of this? Ask God first. Before you ask God for the stuff, before you ask God for the next thing, ask God to transform your mind, the way that you think. All right?
Well, guys, we just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this with us. Yeah. You know, the mind is powerful, and we want you to understand just how important you are to God and how important you are to us. Yeah. And so therefore, as you think, right, the Bible tells us, as a man thinketh.
Come on.
And so what we need for you to do is to make sure that you are thinking positive thoughts about yourself, that you are thinking of yourself as someone who cannot just prosper in like financial, but that you prosper in life, right? We usually just take prosper and dim it and put it into like such a small box, but we want to think about our whole life. Right. And so this week, our prayer is that you think something different, that you think positive about yourself, that you think in a way that's prosperous, not just to you financially, but prosperous to your whole person. And also think positive about those around you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. We ask that you be praying for us, especially as we are on this journey with church planting. And we know that so many of you send us messages of support and encouragement, and we are grateful for that. So pray for our minds. Pray that we're not out here thinking crazy and talking crazy. Pray that God will guard our hearts and our minds, and that we do it too, because we've been empowered to do that for ourselves. So thank y'all so much. We will see you next time, next week. Join in, share, like, subscribe. Send it to somebody. You can. We told y'all before, you can send it. Include it in your ratchet emails. Won't care. Send the link. We want to be able to reach out to people and really share what God is doing, because we are all the house that God is building. All right.
All right. See ya.